Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Remember in Monopoly, there's the cards in the middle of the table, and you get one that says bank error in your favor? Have you noticed that in real life that never happens? It only happens in the game of Monopoly. Bank errors are almost always into their favor. The amazing thing is how they don't catch bank errors in their favor. They only catch them when they're in your favor. So, crazy story, Regions Bank has agreed to repay customers $141 million in illegal overdraft fees. Chris sent me a note on this, as Steve checks out from CBS. For the second time in a decade, Regions Bank was found to have charged illegal overdraft fees, according to the government. Now, in a settlement that will require the bank to repay $141 million to customers and pay an additional $50 million in fees, this was all announced just the other day. In an investigation, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau found that between 2018 and 2021, Regions Bank was charging overdraft fees on some ATM withdrawals as well as some debit card purchases, even after the bank told the customers they had enough funds in their account to cover the transaction. And this bank, by the way, is based in Alabama. So you go to your bank, you check your balance, says money's there, you take some money out, it goes, you overdrafted. Sorry. And you go, wait, but you told me I had the money. That doesn't matter, you overdrafted. The CFPB also found that Regions executives knew the error in the system was occurring, but held off making adjustments to the practice until the bank could find ways to replace the revenue lost from the fees. So they were told there's a problem. Fix it. They said, well, we'll fix it as soon as we can figure out a way to make the money some other way. And I've mentioned before, it's usually true of the government, but it's also true of other people. Once there's a spigot that has money flowing through it, getting someone to willfully turn off the spigot almost never happens. So they were actually looking at this wrongful fee and saying, look, it's generating us all this money. We can't stop doing it. It's making us money. The agency said overdraft and NSF fees, non-sufficient funds, otherwise known as a bounce check fee, were roughly 18% of the bank's non-interest income in 2019. In 2019, the bank made 18% of its non-interest income through these fees. Now, some of the fees may have been legitimate, but the point is that a lot of them were not. Regions Bank raked in tens of millions of dollars in surplus overdraft fees every year, even after its own staff warned that the bank's practices were illegal. That's the director of the CFPB speaking in a statement. Too often, large financial firms make a calculation that continuing to break the law is more profitable than following it. We have more work to do to change this mentality. Imagine that you work at that bank. You discover this. You go to your boss and say, hey guys, I discovered a problem. We're telling people there's money in the account. There's not. They're getting hit with fees. And the boss goes, okay, it's making us money. Now what do? So in a statement, Regions said that while it disagreed with the Bureau's assessment of their business practices, it was pleased to put the settlement behind it. So we disagree with that, but we'll pay $141 million out of the goodness of our hearts. Over a year ago, Regions stopped charging this particular overdraft fee, said their chief legal officer in a statement. We took this action as part of a broader series of enhancements that include updating, hang on, I'm circling the euphemism, that include updating the bank's posting order and transaction processing to give customers a clearer view of the money they have available for making purchases while avoiding fees. And circling the euphemism is not a euphemism. This is not the first time Regions has been fined for its overdraft fee practices. In 2015, the Bureau ordered Regions to refund $49 million and pay a $7.5 million penalty for charging overdraft fees. Those Regions customers were charged for overdraft when they had opted out of the service. Under President Biden, the CFPB, which was created in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis to protect consumers from financial abuse, has taken a dim view of onerous overdraft fees. The agency said earlier this year that consumers pay at least $29 billion annually in what it describes as excessive charges. During the pandemic, the average fee for overdrawing an account was $33, according to Bankrate. Big U.S. banks have generated about $9 billion annually in revenue from overdraft, ATM, and other fees in recent years, according to the Center for Responsible Lending. And there's nothing wrong with them charging fees. And theoretically, if banks want to compete for your business, they'll compete in also how much they charge in overdraft fees and so on. But the point is that if they tell you the money is there and you go to take it out and they say, "Oop, you overdrafted," you were following their instructions. Now, you'll notice that the chief legal officer of Regions Bank says, we have a broader series of enhancements that they've enacted to fix the problem. Enhancements. And I'm always fascinated by legal terms and business terms where they will create a euphemism that sounds very, very different than what it is. So it's not theft, it's adverse possession, right? And here, it's not a penalty, and it's not them correcting something. It's an enhancement. It's a series of enhancements. And so what are they enhancing? They're enhancing their behavior. They're enhancing the rules by which you get hit with an overdraft fee. They're actually just going to stop breaking the law. They're going to start following the law. And this is so absurd, but again, that's why these guys get the big bucks as the chief legal officer there at Regions Bank in Alabama. And that is that they've decided to use a broader series of enhancements. And the broader series of enhancements will stop the illegal overdraft fees. Okay? So the interesting thing is that they were doing it for a while. Some people within the bank called attention to it. And other people in the bank actually said, well, we're making so much money from it, we can't stop doing it because that would be a loss of a source of income. And that's what's even crazier about it. And it does not look like they're actually paying a fine here. It says that the settlement will require the bank to repay $141 million to customers and pay an additional $50 million in fees. And it doesn't mention a fine. And so you'd think that if they knowingly ripped people off for $141 million and somebody told them inside the bank, somebody at the bank notified other people in the bank and said, we have a problem here, we're doing something illegal. And people in the bank said, well, but we're making money doing it, we got to keep doing it. You'd think that's where somebody should be fined. Now, I don't know what it says here, $50 million in fees. I don't know what that means. Is that fees being paid back to the clients of the bank, or is that fees being paid to the government? I don't know. I wouldn't see it called fees if it was supposed to be a fine. But this is exactly the situation that calls for fines and possibly criminal charges. I mean, I would assume it's a crime if you continue to knowingly rip people off. Your institution is ripping people off. You know it. Other people within the institution have called attention to it, and you choose not to do anything about it because you're making money. And that is, of course, the criticism that everybody has about corporations, because corporations have been granted personhood by the U.S. Supreme Court. In many respects, they're treated like people. So a corporation has got constitutional rights, for instance. And I'm not saying that's wrong. But my point is that you can't just take some of the rights and ignore the responsibilities. And so it seems to me that if a corporation commits a crime, somebody, in some cases, should be looking at jail time. And you could say, Steve, but the corporation, you can't put a corporation in jail. No, but the corporation is actually run by people. And if the corporation is breaking the law, there are people within the corporation who are deciding to do that. Those people should face some sort of criminal liability, I would think. Because otherwise, this happens. How do you get a bank to stop breaking the law when they know if they get caught, all they got to do is give the money back? Oops. And ask yourself what would happen if you or I stole $141 million and they had evidence that not only you or I stole the money, but witnesses who said, I said to them, you guys are stealing money. And they said, yeah, but if we stop, we won't be making all this money. That's where people go to jail. So why more is not being done here, I don't know. But I salute the CFPB for doing something. They're doing something, right? So it's $141 million being repaid to customers and an additional $50 million in fees, but it's unclear if there's any fines involved or if the bank's being forced to do anything that hurts them at all other than just give some of the money back. It's unclear, by the way, if this is all the money they took or just some of the money they took. So it's a crazy story, but Regions Bank to repay customers $141 million in illegal overdraft fees. And Chris sent it to me. And there's a bigger question, of course. And that is, let's suppose that you paid something using your debit card and that payment bounced. There's often ramifications with the merchant or whoever it is that bounced with. So let's suppose you went online to pay your power bill. Did your power get shut off? Did you have to do something just to pay them any money? Quite often, the fee from the bank is only one of the fees involved when something like this goes wrong. So it's a mess. It's a small step in the right direction, but it's not far enough. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. I was a peripheral visionary. I could see the future, but only way off to the side.